Alright, we are back with a new video, and for the last time this season, we'll be updating the Big Brother Canada power rankings following the Final Four veto results, and this should be pretty interesting to break down, especially now that the feeds are down. A lot of this is going to be based purely on speculation, but I'm going to do my best to break it down here. But as usual, I'm going to be ranking these players based on how likely it is that they'll win the game from this point. And with there only being 4 players left, this is going to be relatively short. But let's not waste any more time. Let's get right into the video. So starting off at number 5, we have the latest boot from the season. And here we have JC Lynn. Now, coming into last week, I was expecting her to beat a boot, especially once Betty won the HOH and JC Lynn was unable to win the veto. However, there was a decent chunk of the latter half of the week where it seemed like JC Lynn had a chance to stay, especially once it came out that Josh was no longer loyal to Kevin and Helena. Kevin and Helena really went back and forth with them trying to figure out what to do. We saw JC Lynn campaign pretty well towards them, trying to build like a final 2 deal with them along the way. But ultimately, Kevin and Helena ultimately decided to evict JC Lynn, which I do think was the incorrect move for both of them, really, especially after this new stuff came out. But obviously, there was a major concern that JC Lynn would have won out from that point, so I kind of understand it, but also put them in a much more difficult position moving forward. And on the whole, JC Lynn, I wasn't too impressed by her game. I actually felt like of the final 5, she would have been the least satisfying winner to me. I mean, she definitely had a lot of potential to win out, especially if Josh were to come out of the final 5 round. However, aside from that, there really isn't too much to her game. I mean, she was aligned with Gino for a lot of it, and there was a decent chunk of the early game where she wasn't really well trusted. Now, there were a couple points where she definitely was playing more actively, especially compared to Gino. However, by the end, she was definitely in a position to win out, and when she was unable to do so, she was ultimately evicted. However, there was points during that last week where it seemed like there was a chance she could stay, so that's something at least. But ultimately, she was evicted here at 5th, and because of that, she's here at number 5. And with that, we are now moving to the 4 players remaining in the game. And as usual, I'll be ranking them based on how likely it is that they'll win the game from this point. And to be honest, this can be a little tough to forecast, especially now that the live feeds are off. We're basing a lot of this on speculation, if we're being perfectly honest, but we're going to do our best. But at number 4, the person I think is the least likely to win the season from this point is Kevin. And a lot of this is from the composition results, where, from what I understand, Josh won both the HOH and the veto. Now, there was some speculation early on that Helena won the veto and HOH initially, but it seems like, based on the subreddit, that Josh has won the HOH and the veto, which obviously puts Kevin in a lot of danger. As if he wasn't HOH, then obviously he would have the sole vote to evict as the veto holder, and he would more than likely vote to evict Kevin. However, even if he was the HOH, there's a good chance that he put Kevin and Alina up, which obviously would leave Betty as the sole vote to evict, and she would probably also vote out Kevin based on what we know right now. Now, to Kevin's credit, there is a chance that he could convince Josh to keep him, like maybe mend things over or whatever, but it's not looking great right now. He really needed this Final Four veto result, either him or Helena to win it to ensure that they would get to the Final 3 together. However, at this point, it's not looking particularly likely. Now, we'll have to see what happens, but it's not looking great. And I do think, obviously, he flipped back and forth a lot this past week between voting out JC Lynn and voting out Josh. And while he ultimately voted out JC Lynn, I don't think he did a good enough job at solidifying Josh's loyalty. And through that, I feel like he possibly made the wrong decision here. Where I understand his logic of voting out JC Lynn, but obviously, like, he didn't have enough reason to trust her final 2 deal with him. And plus, like, he waited so long and he waffled so back and forth to where even if he somehow gets to the end, that it'll be hard for him to get JC Lynn's jury vote unless he can Helena, I suppose. So those are definitely things that are harming Kevin moving forward. But there is a sliver of a chance he could convince either Josh or Betty to keep him around to Final 3. But for now, I have to leave him here at number 4. Now we're moving on to number 3, and we actually have Kevin's partner, and here we have Helena. Now, Again, as I said last week, I think Helena has a decent shot of getting to the end at this point. However, especially after this previous vote, I'm not feeling great about her actual winning chances, as I feel like her specifically voting out JC Lynn was the wrong move. She definitely should have voted out Josh, even if it was something Kevin wanted, as a way of demonstrating to the jury that she had made a move on her own. By doing this, she's really showing that she's subservient to Kevin, and she even expressed that to the people in the house as he was making the decision. She said something along the lines of her wanting to do what Kevin wanted, which is obviously terrible jury management, as it really highlights her as a follower more than anything else. And it's really harmed her jury chances on the whole, especially if she's against Kevin at the end. But even if she's against Josh or Betty at this point, I'm not feeling too great about her, if I'm being perfectly honest. But the fact that she is at least somewhat likely to get to the final two is a big reason I have her here at number 3. Now we're moving on to number 2, and I think this is the definitive top 2 at this point, assuming Kevin is evicted here at final 4. It's just a matter of if this person can get here. But at number 2, we have Josh. And I think Josh is in an interesting position where, I mean, he's definitely not a guarantee to win a jury vote, as it seemed like a lot of people were upset by his performance during the triple eviction, particularly Summer and even Betty at this point. But considering he has won the Final Four veto, at least he has a chance to make a big move and cut Kevin. Obviously, getting the information that Kevin wasn't completely loyal to him is something to his credit, and it's hopefully something that can translate into a decent move. And obviously, at this point, all he has to do now is win the final HOH and probably win the game at this point, which he definitely has a lot of capability of doing. I mean, he is definitely the strongest competitor of the players still in the game. It's just a matter of if he can win that final HOH. But the reason I have him here at number 2 is that if he doesn't win a final HOH, then he's probably going to be evicted regardless. I feel like if Kevin goes out at 4th, then Helena is the clear person to take to the end. Now, granted, Josh could take Betty regardless and win against her, but he would still need to win final HOH to get that. And to be fair, I think he definitely has the potential to do so, but it's the lack of a guarantee that leaves me here at number 2 for him. And now, at number 1, the person I think is the most likely to win Big Brother Canada 10 at this point is Betty. And I know that's sort of crazy to think about at this point, but I think Betty has a decent shot of winning the game based on her competition. I think if she gets to the end against Helena, she has a very good shot at this point. And who knows? I mean, maybe she'll take Josh, which I think probably is a mistake for her. But I think she recognizes at this point that she has a chance of winning the game. And probably through that, she could win the final HOH, get that last bit of respect that she needs to win the jury vote, and ultimately take the right person to the end. I think the fact that she has won competitions and the fact that she is kind of sort of playing for herself at this point is something that she could definitely communicate to the jury. I think the fact that she's won competitions is the fact that she can get respect from the jury. And I know some people may not agree with this per se. I think Josh possibly on paper has more win equity than her, but I think Betty's more likely to get to the final two than Josh, which is the ultimate factor that I decided to put her above Josh, and because of that, she's here at number 1. And there we go. That will do it for this week's video and the power rankings for Big Brother Canada. Now, I am planning to do some post-season coverage for this after the finale comes out, namely a review as well as a player ranking, so stay tuned for that. I am still covering Survivor 42 as usual. The circle starts this week, so next Monday you should expect a video for that. And I have some other videos planned in general. A lot of stuff coming your way. But for now, that is the video. See ya.